and Barnabas, alongside whose preaching God Himself testified with signs and wonders effectually, when they go to prayer at night, not say, "Do it again"? And how could Martyn Lloyd-Jones, who spends many pages saying what the world needs is attestation, gifts, and then come to the end and say, "Don't ask for them"? Now, he's probably trying to be careful here of a focus on phenomena, and I respect that, but frankly, I can't make it square with 1 Corinthians 14:1. In fact, is it not the case in Acts 4:30 that they did pray for signs and wonders? They said, "Father, grant your servants to speak with all boldness while you stretch forth your hand to heal." They asked Him to do it. Therefore, we have biblical warrant to ask Him to do it. And I don't understand Lloyd-Jones except that he was not a person that could risk that kind of trouble. Quote, "Does it not seem clear and obvious that in this way God is calling attention to Himself?" I think I'll leave that quote out. That's just a quote to talk about His valuing of the phenomena. Well, let me close by simply saying, it seems to me that in his preaching, Lloyd-Jones presented us a masterfully balanced picture of what today is maybe in the offing. Namely, avoiding on the one side the spirit-quenching intellectualism, and on the other side the man-centered, entertainment-oriented, non-doctrinal emotionalism. And he called people. He called us to what I think this conference has been calling us to. And then he didn't do it, it seems to me, because his view and his personality, it looks like, hindered him, quenched the Spirit. So I just close with this beautiful call of his, a closing exhortation. Let us together decide to beseech Him, to plead with Him to do this again, revival. Not that we may have the experience or the excitement, but that His mighty hand may be known and His great name may be glorified and magnified among the peoples. And I put an S on that word, peoples, because I want you to see that what I've said here is going to lead into John Kyle's message. I've designed these conferences every year to terminate on world missions. That's very intentional. And if you don't walk out of this conference later on today more gripped for the unreached peoples of the world and the completion of the Great Commission, I will consider that this has been very largely a failure, and that we would have fallen prey to the abuses of experiences rather than the vision-giving power of experiences. Now, questions for 15 or 20 minutes. Fred?
John, do you think it is possible that Lloyd-Jones had the difficulty with the charismatic movement at the time that it really began because he had fought so long and hard against the ecumenical movement there in Britain, and he saw that oftentimes that which was used to call a man a brother was not the doctrinal basis of repentance and faith toward God, but whether or not one had experienced these manifestations of spiritual gifts, and that he saw it perhaps as a new type of unbiblical ecumenicism.
Yes, I think that's exactly what he would have thought. The unity was being forged on the basis of experiences, not doctrine. He thought that was devastating, and I think he was right. Dan? Thank you, David.
I think, at least in my mind, this whole thing about cautions is really kind of a cutting edge as far as within this book. And I guess I want your reflection on Edwards and Whitefield as far as the Great Awakening, and whether ordinary people, and I think you're probably right, ordinary people get scared by the cautions, but without the cautions, where do ordinary people end up? And just like some of your reflections on Edwards and Whitefield and their dealing with both the quenching of the Spirit and the extremism there. Is that the question? I don't know.
Well, I just will say what I said already. I think the cautions are necessary. The question had to do with, I'm not sure what the question was. Comment on Whitefield and Edwards in regard to cautions, and do cautions then quench the Spirit. I tried to emphasize long, powerful, extended, repeated cautions. In other words, if the subjective sense coming from the pulpit is these are mainly dangerous rather than mainly glorious and wonderful and desirable, then you're going to quench the Spirit.
Would you say you wait till something happens before you caution?
No, it's a matter of balance. I mean, people will read you. They'll know. They'll know subjectively whether you're more scared or more excited, whether you're more open or more closed, by how long you do it, how you do it, the tone of your voice when you do it, whether you sneer at things. You can read the articles in the Standard and know where a person is emotionally pretty easily. We'll go over here. Yeah, Bill. Please, tell us about your experience, just so they know where you're coming from. Right.
I've sat under his ministry for years. A lot of what you say is true, but a lot of what you say is heavily modulated by the banner of truth. And the banner of truth could yet succeed in determining what the image of Lloyd-Jones is. There's another side to him that didn't come through. I think you're right. When you say you have to read Lloyd-Jones, really, as it were, in the original to find out what the real man was. His time at Sanford was very different from his time at Westminster. Westminster was a huge emporium. I mean, it was just a vast cavern. At Sanford, where he started, he had a smaller meeting, and he had there he had the experience meetings. And I think if you read the first volume, and he looks back wistfully, I think, at his days there, well, times when he would say sermons were almost literally given to him of a morning. Whereas he got later on, when he was more experienced, he knew exactly what he could do. So there is the division between the two periods of his life. It is true that he was an organizational disaster. I mean, he had just no time for organization. I think he practiced everything that he preached in private. And he also ministered other ministers in private using those principles. But I think he believed that the gifts themselves were secondary to the power in preaching. And what he would want to happen would be to set the ambience of power, because he believed that Christianity was inevitable. He believed that the gifts were inevitable. What would have frightened him would be technique and learning how to do these in the absence of powerful preaching, because the mainspring that drove him was his preaching. And when you listen to him, you'd listen for 20 minutes, and you might even walk out and say, well, what are they all talking about? But he would build his argument, and he always said that his logic had to precede his rhetoric. Never allowed his rhetoric to precede his logic. Now, that's why he doesn't like the preliminaries. What he wants to do is to set the holy logic up and to hold Jesus out before the people and then watch what happens, because he believed it was inevitable and you would never stop them. If you preach the gospel in the way that Whitley and Wesley did, they'll break the church doors down to get in. And when they're in, they won't go home because you're feeding their needs. Now,
Did he do that? Would you put him in that category?
Well, people breaking the doors down here? Yes, I
I just got the impression the church did not significantly grow.